Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is raining outside. It is dry inside. It's inside the game here on this wacky Wednesday. Jonathan Turner alongside Nathan Wangler. It might be raining in Michigan. It probably not raining where you're watching right now around the country. Maybe, I don't know. It's supposed to be raining pretty much everywhere in the Midwest today. But either way, we're excited to have you along watching on the National Soccer Network. And it is episode number 56, my friend. 56.
5-6. We got a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff to talk about too. Had a lot of it's interesting. We're entering into this phase now where we have obviously the biggest amateur cup in the United States, the longest running one in the country's history. And then we also have the World Cup coming up after that. So there's a lot of, and with the Gold Cup mixed in there as well. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming up. And so I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. We haven't even mentioned the Ron Newman Cup, which is starting soon. I think there's Arena League Soccer it's an interesting field this year. So there could be a lot of mayhem. There could be a lot of madness, if you will. I know we're not in March anymore, but there's a lot of good stuff coming up down the pipeline. So, but I'm interested to get into the conversation, the U.S. Open Cup today, man. There were a lot of good games yesterday, a lot of good games coming up today. It's an interesting field with a lot of some ragamuffin teams and then other teams that look really clean, and no one really knows what's what because there's still upsets. There were still a bunch of upsets yesterday, so it'll be a good chat to have.
I'm pissed. I'll be the first one to tell you I'm pissed. I'm all about the underdog, but not when I'm picking the other one. Not when I'm picking the non-underdog to win, right? I picked everybody yesterday who I felt was strong enough to win, and then it was 10:30. Monterey Bay game was happening. The LAFC game was happening. I was up 4. I had 4 wins. You were down 4-2 at that point. And sure as shit, like the last 2 games, man, it's like the miracle on ice last night. I was going to clean sweep your ass. I was like, and then out of nowhere,
yep.
Again, El Farolito beating Monterey Bay, an MPSL team. And then you've got this AV Alta FC from USL League One beating LAFC 2. I mean, my goodness, frustrating as hell. So we ended 4-4 and a chance at redemption today, right? So, because, man, when it was like high school, like we picked our high school, state champions and how we thought of the playoffs and everything. I mean, I think it was me and Dan that like obviously led the way. But clean swept everybody else, man. Somehow yesterday, me and you fouled. You're getting better at this, Nathan. You're getting better at picking teams. I mean, it's due to happen, right? Because you've been not calling soccer games a lot more now and getting used to soccer. So I guess it's only natural that you'll get a little better at picking teams winning. But still,
Picking teams it's as good as a multiple choice test. And there are a lot of people who have passed multiple choice tests that didn't study for a second ever. They didn't look at anything. They didn't look at the course material. It's no different than in my mind when it comes to sometimes picking teams. Because like I said, I've had people, at least on the basketball side, pick teams because they like their colors or like their mascot, not nearly because they like anything else about them. And yet they go on to have a better bracket. If I told you that my sister actually picked Oakland last year, you probably would have called me crazy, but she did. And that's what happened. That's what happened. Actually, I think Kamala Harris picked them too. She thought it was Oakland, California, not Oakland. Anyways, but that's beside the point. It doesn't – sometimes it's a little bit of thinking that goes into it, but you know this just as well, JT. The only thing that has to happen is the ball has to go into the net. And as long as one team finds a way to do that once more than the other team, that they win. So there's a lot of toss-up. There's a lot of parity in the game of soccer. So I felt comfortable going with the teams that my heart desired won, right? And that was enough for me to justify picking some of those teams. Now, 4-0 FC was a letdown. El Farolito came up clutch, is what it is. I'm okay with a tie, though. That sets up an exciting second half.
You know what they say, though? What ties are. It's like kissing your cousin, as they say ties are, right? Isn't that how that works? It's like kissing your cousin. No.
I've done a couple 0-0 ties. It's special.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you've kissed your cousins. I thought that's where you were going to go. Okay, good.
Not that part.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning. Hey, so this morning, what we're going to do this morning? Yesterday, we talked about on this show. We talked about recruitment. We talked about how early is too early. Just recently, we brought on board as a member of our team in social media land a young lady who playing soccer her entire career, right? Starting off at age 5, playing in California, and ultimately going in and playing at the collegiate level, and actually ended up going over and playing in Spain for a bit too, playing professionally. So she's experienced soccer and various levels and competition from a young age all the way up through a professional rank. So we're going to talk with Victoria Quay here this morning on the show. She's got some unique insight, I believe, into recruitment and the conversation that we're having yesterday. Because again, and it's different for the female athlete than it is for the male athlete, specifically in soccer, right? We talk about that. We mentioned that in previous shows that right now it's 2-1. Right now, the opportunities for females than for males when it comes to the opportunities in college, especially in Division I. Right. So we know that. And while it might not be true in every scenario, it's based on the statistics, it's pretty close. So we'll talk with her this morning about that. We will talk about and get our picks in for who we think is going to win here tonight in U.S. Open Cup. We will talk a little Ron Newman Cup. Again, that's coming up here starting on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so we are excited to have Victoria on here in just a moment. She is right now waiting in our green room, so we'll get her on here in just a few moments. As I mentioned yesterday and throughout this week, I am traveling to San Diego here tomorrow morning. So actually, I have to check in for my flight. Nathan, do you want to carry the show while I check into my Delta Airlines flight at this exact moment? It's not like Southwest where, you had to like check and get in like that. Like if you don't check it right at 9 o'clock, you get like right into line. Like it's not that bad. But I mean, I'm curious to those who are watching right now. Is that like a panic thing for you, like an anxiety thing, like trying to get into your thing, checking in, acknowledging all that? Is there like anxiety associated with checking in for your flight?
Any
like
flying
not at the
thing,
airport, but like just,
anything flying related is an anxiety trip for me. I don't know what everybody else thinks about necessarily, but yes, if you want me to go through this, we can definitely go through this. I think Victoria will be a good one to talk to. Obviously, to get you guys an understanding of who she is. She has been posting on her social media. She has been doing some one-on-one spotlight interviews. But yeah, born over on the West Coast, been playing since she was 5 years old. So you're right. I think that'll give us a unique look kind of into the process of all of it. I'm actually in the midst of talking to a couple of different people as well. One, Tiago dos Santos, he's born in Brazil. He actually plays at Bethel University. They're national champions in the NAI. They've actually been back to the final site, I think 3 or 4 times in a row now. They're the real deal. So I'm just going to chat with him. But it'll be interesting to get the international taste too as well, because I think the thing is the American game, as much as it is influenced by the way they play over the seas, it is also influenced by the players that come from overseas. And so they bring their various skill sets and knowledge and the way that they play at home. And obviously with him being from Brazil, it's a different brand in terms of the physicality. So it'll be really good to get that talk in with her. Let's go through some of the U.S. Open Cup results, because I know that we talked about it yesterday. And, obviously we had a running bet going. We ended up drawing even. And there were a few games mixed in there that I really wanted to talk about. And there's some teams that really choked it away. We can start off number one with the upsets. I really like, and I know we had the opportunity, JT and I, to actually call a game at the lower.com field. Columbus Crew 2 looked scary yesterday. And they actually said that this one was an upset. They only had 7 shots the entire game, but the one thing they did do was defensively they shut things down. And they actually, I believe they had a few players that were on the UPSL side when we were down there actually playing on this Columbus Crew 2 team now. So Owen Prestis, who I believe was someone who was on the team when we were down there, he got the first goal at 7 minutes in, Christian Ortiz at 65, and then they ended up adding another one in extra time. 4 minutes of extra time. But the thing that really stuck out to me, and I remember reading the preview on the U.S. men's or the U.S. soccer website, they called them underdogs. And this circles back to the whole conversation we had about the U.S. versus Panama, right? Possession without purpose doesn't really do much for you. Lexington SC possessed the ball for 65% of that game, 87% pass accuracy. They had 12 shots, but only 3 on target. So the one thing the Crew did was they took a lot of pressure off goal, and also their midfield looks dangerous. So I think they might have a legitimate chance to actually make a run here. And like I said, their development system in Columbus, one of my favorites. They got a lot of great development teams. Not only that, right, when you talk about the parent side actually winning an MLS Cup recently, that changes everything. The other matchup, South Georgia Tormenta FC ended up defeating 4-0 3-2. That was the one that I was a little disappointed about. The Dallas part-timers, as we were calling them, brutal ending, brutal way to go out. Just didn't have the legs to hold up in that game. And that was the part of the conversation I said yesterday. Like, they can have a good game. They can go toe-to-toe, but do they have the legs to be able to hold up? They put in a goal to level things in 2 minutes of extra time, ended up losing it in 4 minutes of extra time when Sebastian Javier Vivas put in the game-winning goal at that point for South Georgia Tormenta FC. These names, I swear, some of them are mouthfuls. Goodness gracious. But they had 6 shots on target, only had 11 fouls. They drew 21 from South Georgia. No cards, or 3 yellow cards looked like, but no red cards ended up coming out. But again, it was a battle of wills in that game. And unfortunately, when you talk about the bench for 4-0 was just not as deep. And that was the part that I knew making that pick. Again, that was an emotional pick. That was not I wanted to, I truly believe they were the better team in the equation. That's who I wanted to win that game, which, you either go with your heart or you go with your mind. My heart said 4-0. Clearly they didn't have the legs to hold up. Inter Miami 2 and Miami FC was another interesting one that we were watching. Inter Miami kind of got ran off the field. 13 shots for Miami FC, 7 of them on target, just 1 on target for Inter Miami that whole game. Didn't win the possession game, but they played too cute. Inter Miami played too cute. 66% possession. They doubled up on the amount of passes Miami FC had. Only had 9 fouls in the game. Didn't end up, drawing any red cards. Looked like it was 4 apiece for both sides, but they didn't do anything with it. That they were just too cute with the ball, and it led to turnovers, and it led the opportunities the other way. And first goal actually came in the 84th minute. That game was 0-0 right up until about 6 minutes before that final whistle. So, a clean game all told, but they were just too cute. Miami FC ended up jumping all over top of them. Charlotte Independence ended up topping Carolina Core 2-1 in their game. The Core, like I said, we say this all the time, they lack possession with purpose as well. I mean, you got to look at some of these stats. 19 shots, 62% possession, 772 passes, 89% pass accuracy. Only had 4 shots on target, but they were able to knot the game at 10 minutes. And then, like I said, I think they just weren't able to get forward. I think the one thing the Independents did successfully yesterday was batten down the hatches on defense. I mean, it was 2 goals within the first 10 minutes and then not another one until 93 in. So you had added time, and the Independents, is one of those things, like weather the storm. Like, we're just going to play back on our back heel. If you just want to pass it around on your back line, that's fine. We're just going to wait for our opportunity and capitalize. So the Independents won that one 2-1. El Farolito. See, that's the one talked about. That one saved me. It 100% saved me. And that was another question of I didn't know if they had the legs to hold up. And early on, it didn't look like they would have a chance. Monterey Bay FC hits one a banger. 28 minutes in, Xavi Gonalti, it just top shelf nasty work. And then El Farolito finds a way to just come back. And they scored one in the 57th minute, the 83rd minute. They were really efficient with the way they attacked, but persistence, and I think defensively they were able to stand tall well. Hernandez put one in the 57th minute, and then Creye in the 83rd minute. Those guys, I don't know if their journey ends after this, and I'll be completely honest. I'll be the first one to say I don't know if they necessarily have the talent to take it the entire way, but I do think that the way that they're playing right now, don't underestimate a team that should be out of the conversation or wasn't necessarily in the conversation to begin with, that's going on a hot run right now. So we'll have to see exactly what their second round matchup is but they looked really impressive, and just their persistence yesterday and not folding after that early goal. And then obviously the last one, Ava Alta FC defeating LAFC 2. They actually beat them in added extra time or overtime, that is, without an extra man. So they actually beat them down a man. But 8 shots on target in that one. I thought their passing looked really good. Obviously played a physical brand of game. You see that. I mean, just a couple of yellow cards, but did have a red card. But that was probably the most exciting matchup of all of them, because that actually went into overtime and they were just able to sneak it out. So that just seemed to be happenstance. That was a coin flip right there between those two that canceled each other out. But yeah, what a first day. What a first day with some of those games in the way that they went.
Couple things. One is if you ever watch Columbus Crew 2 play, first off, if you haven't, you should go watch them. So I'd go watch that U.S. Open Cup game. They play this style of soccer. It's high possession, heavy possession based. They don't have a problem with a goalkeeper playing without their goal line, basically, right? So go watch that team. We've seen them a number of times in person, and they play a style of play very reminiscent of the number one, right, in MLS side in Carew. And they are just builders out of the back, and so they're always going to outpossess teams, because that's all they do is possess.
Right.
It comes with plus and minuses. A lot of times it can put you in situations where if you make a mistake, it can cost you. And we saw that happen in the UPSL playoffs last year in the semifinal. Again, you get the ball away and you lose a game, on a bad giveaway. It can make you really vulnerable out of the back, but it could also have a high success rate if you can do it well, right?
Yeah.
So it's something I would encourage you to go watch.
The one thing the Crew have is an identity. That they have an identity. They have a blueprint. They have the way they like to play, which is something that is rare. But if organizations have that, and if teams have that, and that's built in, that filters everything else in. Everyone wants to talk about next man up mentality. The way that you do that is you build an expectation of how we want to play. And that's what the Crew have done. And that's, even in that short time of watching them, and then, trying to watch some of their MLS games as well, I've picked up on that. So that's something that is certainly helping carry them really at all levels. That
it is. And so, the thing I want to do, we're gonna bring Victoria on here in just a moment. And we're gonna tee this up. At least I believe this is the right way to tee it up. We talked about this yesterday. We talked about recruitment, and I made this comment about, finding a love for the game outside of just playing it. Because if you can do that, then the sport that you love doesn't die in vain if you don't continue your career, right? I mean, think about how many athletes play and they give it everything. They give it everything that they have from the moment they start playing to the moment that they're done, and then it's just over with. Right?
Sure.
And it's over with. And to be fair, football. You played football, right? To be fair, there is nothing after your collegiate career from a pickup competitive standpoint, at least that I'm aware of, where if you want to still lace up the shoes, the cleats, and go play at 30 years old outside of flag football, there's nothing. And if there is, it's pick up in the park on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's semi.
Right? I mean, the semi-pro, whatever. There's not a lot of semi-pro.
It's still not. It's not competitive. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. So if you want to continue your career, football players, it's over. There's obviously there's other sports like tennis and golf and things like that that can continue on. But think about this swimming competitively. Are there competitive swim leagues that are like plus, over 30? I have no idea. Maybe there are. I can't imagine that there are, but maybe there are. Are there over 30 competitive basketball? Yes, there is. There is. Still competitive. You can still go play it. Soccer is one of those unique sports that you could play up until you're 60 years old if you wanted to, competitively in some league around this country. So your career doesn't have to end when your collegiate career ends if you can't make it to the next levels. But you could continue on as a player in those environments. But I keep coming from this mindset that, training, refereeing, coaching, fan, all of those things encompassing, making up your own faux league is one way, I guess, to stay in it. I mean, the coffee firm and this league here in Michigan, we talked about it last week on the show. They have created this kind of faux league right? That is fun. As I don't know if you hear the thunder just
Oh
rolling
yeah,
around right
it's
now.
rolling. Yep.
It's this faux league, but what it does is it allows these people, these fans of the game, to continue on their love of the sport, but in a new way that I in a million years never would have thought of. So they're able to take the passion. And to be fair, they might have never played soccer. I mean, there's a lot of fans out there that have never played, but they want to be involved. They want to quote unquote be involved. So they have like FIFA manager, like or like the manager aspect, not the game, but then the managers thing. They have these faux leagues, right? They become members of their local like teams and be on their board and be involved in the fan aspect of this. You know what I mean? Like, so
Right.
they create these things so that they can find a way to kind of harness all this energy and put it into their passion.
Right.
And it's really, really cool. And Victoria, when we first introduced Victoria here about 2 months ago, her passion unwavering in regards to her love for soccer is unwavering. And again, her story is unique to her. And we're going to bring her on right now. We're going to bring on and Victoria, as I bring you on. This is your first time being on a live podcast, I'm going to say, as I bring you in here. Is this your first time?
Good morning. Yes, it is.
Good morning. Well, welcome. She is a member of the Premier Media Group and the National Soccer Network. You're based out of LA, correct?
I am. And thank you for the kind introduction as well.
Well, you're very, very welcome. So, Victoria, you've been playing soccer for a very long time. You still play it on some level recreationally, like I used to play back when I was in my 30s. I would play co-ed indoor. That was fun.
Yeah.
Blew out my shoulder. That wasn't fun, but it was. Other than that, it was great. So why don't you talk about your start in soccer first? We'll start there, and then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty.
Yeah, of course. I was born and raised here in SoCal in the suburbs, and there's this thing called the AYSO. I don't know if you guys are aware of the American Youth Soccer Organization.
Yep.
Okay. And they were having a 2-for-1 deal, and my sister wanted to play soccer. So my mother registered me as well for free. And my sister said, I hate this. And I was like, this is amazing. That was around the age of 4 or 5. It was all fun and games. And then what's crazy is my recruitment started early. Just one day after a game, an AYSO game, some club coach approached my mother and was like, sorry.
It's okay.
He's literally, I'm not usually like up and at it at 6:30 in the morning, so he's kind of losing his mind. So I'm playing at 4 or 5, AYSO game. Club coach approaches my mother, says, hey, have you ever considered club soccer? She said, get away from me. I am not paying for that. And he tried a couple games, and then they finally, they asked me, they said, hey, would you want to play club? This is going to be something a little more intense. I'm 7 years old. I say, okay, I would love to play club. And that's how my club career started. It was very highs and lows. I played for 4 different clubs in the SoCal region, which is crazy. I mean, I moved a lot. There was politics, friends, injuries. So that's kind of how it went down. And yeah.
So we were talking about this yesterday. Obviously, a love for the game develops, when you start playing it for the first, right? The friendships, the competitive side of it, right? Having success, all those things kind of start to create this love, right? That's unwavering. And then you start to get into this ultra competitive space, right? Where you go from maybe your local club team. Now there's ODP, there's ECNL, there's academies, there's all the regional type things that give you opportunity. At which point now you're going into a mix of other players who are also ultra competitive or want to be in this space. And now you're going head to head in that environment. Talk about that experience for you as a player in California and what that was like as far as that in that process.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I always loved playing the game. That was, what was in my mind. And I'm thankful because I was not my father was my mentor. He's the reason I played soccer. He loved watching soccer, and he never told me once saying, do you want to go play college soccer? He never forced me to do that. He actually kind of incited this dream within me that I would go on to win a World Cup or a Champions League. He was like, you can be like Messi, you can be like Jordi Alba, you can be like any of these people that you love to watch. And I did believe that. And I got my first ODP. Well, my parents got my first ODP recruitment at just like the ripe age of 12. And they were like, hey, you've been selected for this Cal South Olympic Development Program. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm good and I like this. And I always had kind of like a little bit of fame because I was very small. I had a growth development disorder. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but basically I was just, very delayed in growth. So girls started to grow. I was not growing. I was so small. And my parents decided to go see a growth doctor. And the growth doctor suggested growth hormones. And my parents said, Messi took these. And so I said, then I want them. So I took growth hormones for 2 years, and that's just kind of how it went. I played for ODP. I started to grow. I still did not grow a lot. The doctor said I'd go to 5'6". I'm still waiting for that day. And I played ODP, and then at 14, I got recruited for Region 4. So there's 4 regions in the U.S., and you get to play for the regional team. I didn't make the top 11 roster, but I was an alternate, so that was something I'm still very proud of. And I got the chance to get coached by Brandy Chastain, and I met some incredible players, and most of the players that I met are currently playing for the WPSL. So I'm thankful for my experience. I was definitely at the most competitive level for many years of my life, and it was a constant pressure. And I know you guys spoke about, when you're a child and you're going through this, you're training 6 days a week and playing 1 day a week, you miss out on a lot. I did not have an average childhood, I would say. It was not an average, but I loved it and I was happy. I loved it. Don't get me wrong on that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me, and having worked with professionals and around professionals, every single man in that room, in one way or the other, and you hear this about Olympians at the same exact time too, you always hear the stories of how much they sacrificed, right? What they missed, what they didn't go to, what they skipped out on. And a lot of them, it's because of that unwavering love. And I like the fact that you mentioned your dad in there, because I was kind of the same way. And I was consider myself blessed, right? Because I knew at younger than 12, younger than 10, what I wanted to do. And so to me, in hearing you talk about your dad, that tells me that you were probably the same exact way. Like, you understood just from watching him, you wanted to emulate that passion. And so it's not something that I necessarily think is a bad thing, sacrificing all that stuff, but I am curious, with it being so intensive, with them initially noticing you at 7 years old, which, by the way, to me is just beyond crazy. That is beyond crazy. I don't know if anyone went to my Little Tykes football games and saw me pancake a kid at 7 years old and then go, hey, you might be able to play at Michigan. You should come train. That to me is just crazy, but they noticed you early on. Clearly they saw a skill set. Did you still have an opportunity, though, in your mind to live some of that childhood, to experience some of those things, despite how intensive the workload was? Obviously, it wasn't a traditional childhood in this sense, but did you still get to experience those things with the people that you were surrounded by?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, not in its fullest. And there were certain like experiences that were different. For example, my going to school from 8 to 2, it didn't end there for me. And it ended there for most kids, but I had to basically clock into my second school for a couple hours in the afternoon. It was homework and recreation was not exactly the center of everything. It was soccer. But I'm a social butterfly. I made tons of friends, and I was still able to do, fun kid things. I was.
For me as a player, I think anyone that plays at a competitive level is going to be making these sacrifices, right? I missed homecomings, and I didn't miss prom. I did not miss prom, but I missed homecomings. And to be fair, I was a late bloomer when it came to being involved in asking out girls. So that's probably what the real core reason why. It wasn't maybe the fact that I wasn't going to be available to play. Maybe I'm saying that to myself now. Then but looking back on it, but the thing for me and I'm sure this is probably true for you, is that at that time you were hyper focused on what the next level could look like for you, right? You were looking ahead and said, if I want to get there, I have to sacrifice these things. Do you look back on that now as a former player and go, maybe I shouldn't have done that?
I think there was no option. I think at the level that I was playing, there was no option. There wasn't one player that I played with that didn't consider what was going to happen when we turned 18 and graduated high school. By the age of 13, 14, that topic was already the topic of conversation. I think the parents, the coaches, and the other players, it was quite centered all around, development, right? Development for the next stage. So yeah, that was the main focus, and college topic of conversation came very early on as well.
The thing that JT and I always go back and forth on, and sometimes I guess it's the issue in my mind with targeting kids so young, is starting this conversation years and years and years and years beforehand about what is going to happen when you finally get to 18 years old and you graduate. What happens when you get there? There's this mentality that we always have, and I'm the same way. I think every human being's the same way, that the grass is always greener on the other side. There's always a next level, right? But then you get to that level, and then you're like, okay, well, now it's time to get to the next level. There's that constant pressure of looking forward, and I see this with athletes in general. Soccer's no different, of what is going to happen next. And it's your whole life as you develop it. That's the question. And I've seen players burn out. I've seen players get to the end of the line and, realize, kind of like what you were saying, some of the things they missed out on, some of the things they sacrificed. They're like, wow, I want to, at least when I go into college, I want to give myself a chance of just being a college kid, not having to really dedicate my entire life to doing this. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But there is that element to it. But it brings me into this question of, and him and I were talking about this yesterday, of your personal identity, right? Because you wrap up your whole identity in playing this game. Your entire dedication, your focus is, where do I go to get to the next level? And to your credit, it got you into college, right? I mean, that any parent in the world is going to be so eternally grateful that you had the opportunity to go on and play at the next level, because it gave you opportunities in college and to graduate and everything else like that. How hard was it, though, when you got to the end of the line and now you're finally not playing, right? You're into the working world. You're, trying to make it work. You obviously came on with us as a great opportunity, but there is, for a lot of athletes, there's kind of that identity crisis, I guess, when it does finally come to an end. What was that experience like? Your whole life playing this game of soccer since 7 years old, and now you're in a position to where the playing side is no longer there. What was that experience like?
Well, first of all, I want to say it's very refreshing to hear someone really place it to the extent that it is, because, this is not like a light topic for me. This was my whole life. And to answer your question, it was a slow process, and it was a process of accepting what it is. So, COVID came around, and I took those 8 to 9 months of not playing, and it had been the longest I had gone without playing soccer, other than my injuries, of course. And, teams started to start training again, and I had kind of quit the other team that I was playing for in Spain. And it was just kind of like, do I want to play again? So I decided to take like kind of 3 months to think about it. And then I immediately was like, no, I need to play. I need to play soccer. I don't feel like myself. I played for a few more months with another team. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I kind of started to realize and think I am no longer at the highest level. I'm no longer looking towards the future. It's just kind of what I'm doing now. And whether I would, it was completely like decided upon whether I wanted to play or not. It was no longer riding on the pressure of like, but I need to play to get this scholarship, or if I want to go pro, I have to play for this team, It wasn't the but anymore. It was just, do I want to play or not? And I do, but I had 2 ankle surgeries and I slightly tore my meniscus playing that second team in Spain. And so my body started to give out. And it was just this very slow, except and when I came back to the US, everyone's like, are you going to keep playing? My cousins in Mexico are like, are you still playing? Because that was my identity. That was my personal identity. My whole family, my friends, it was like, do you still play soccer? Are you going to play soccer? And that question, every time I received it, and I know it was all out of good love and care, I was just like, maybe, like,
Right.
I didn't know how
Right.
to answer the question because I really didn't know. And this year alone has finally been kind of like the first time in my life where it's like, I'm done. I'm done playing at this highest level. I'm done playing at such a competitive level. I'm gonna do it purely out of enjoyment, even though I've always enjoyed it. Um, just getting up
Right.
after work and putting on some boots and going to play some co-ed indoor, like you said, JT. I mean, that's a ton of fun, but it's a whole different ball game. And yeah, it was a slow process. It was a very slow process.
No, it's well said too, right? And when we look at our past, oftentimes we ask ourselves these questions, right? I can tell you that my parents, right, and you look, I'm your parents as well, will look back and say, hey, we invested time, money, whatever, right? And the whole purpose of that time, money, whatever, was to get you to where they thought maybe that you wanted to go. For me, my parents never pressured me into saying, hey, you have to go do X, Y, or Z. I think my parents were much involved in the club soccer space because of the friendships that were created for them and like the camaraderie that they got out of it. So I think that there was some of that and some of those relationships with my parents still exist to this day because I was on the same club team for like 7 years. So you're going to be going on trips with people. So everybody knew each other. So and they became friends. So as much as it was a money thing and hey, let's get you to college, I actually think for my parents, it was more like, hey, we have some friends now that we can all go hang out with. So for them, it kind of became like this separate thing altogether. But back then, and this is like the mid 90s, to the early 2000s, college scholarships, Division I schools, different with these programs, right? It wasn't a ton of opportunity in the soccer space, right? Especially for full rides. So getting an opportunity and offer, it wasn't this big thing. Title IX happened as well, which ultimately allowed a lot of schools who had Division I men's programs to take those away in lieu of having a women's program. And so, like, for example, Central Michigan has a women's program, but not a men's program here. And I think Eastern's the same thing. Eastern has a women's program, but not a men's program. And there's schools all across the country that are like that. I think Texas, actually, University of Texas, doesn't have a men's soccer program, if I'm not mistaken. They have a women's program, right? So that's how we were talking. So we're talking about in regards to how the game for women has changed in this country as well, especially at the collegiate level. Talk about that for a second. I know we talked about what the end of your career is like and how that kind of dealing with the closure associated with not playing at a competitive level anymore. But how about this path, right? You're a high school kid. You're going through this recruitment process. You played at US. I'm make sure I got this right. You went to University of California State University Northridge, Division I. right? There was a recruitment process. And if you were playing for these regional leagues and playing in these environments, you were being recruited probably at a high level. So you probably had a number of opportunities to go play D3, D2, D1. And was California State, was this your first choice? Were there other choices? And then ultimately kind of talk about that process.
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna not put it lightly. No, it was not. It was by far not my first choice. Um, I I think I wanted at the end of the day to go to a big name school, um, like a Pac-12 or Big Ten, and I wanted to go out of state. I wanted to leave, and there was always that subconscious thought where it's like, do I even want to do this? I want to go play in Spain. I kind of was thinking at the end of the day, I was like, where can I go to school where I can go play in Spain when I'm done? You know, because that was the goal for me. It was. Unfortunately, it wasn't, as possible. My parents didn't want to pay for college at all. They were like, hey, I think it would be best if you could go wherever you get a full ride and then wherever's close to home as well. They kind of like brought me to that realization. They said it's convenient, it's better. And CSUN, when I was recruited, I think I committed at the age of 16. The assistant coach at the time was an old coach of mine, a very, very good friend, old coach who I loved very much. And he said, hey, you should come. Our program is good. I think they had just won Big West, which was their conference. And I loved this coach. And he was going to be there. So I said, you know what? I'll go with the easy option. But it was a process. It was emailing coaches. Hey, I have this game on Saturday. I'll be in DC. I'll be in North Carolina on this weekend. I'll be in Florida. You should come watch me. And it was emailing, being annoying, thinking about where I would want to go, and then seeing who would take interest in me at first. And there were some big name schools that did take interest in me at first, but they didn't offer that full ride, or they didn't, it wasn't as convenient. It was something I wanted to do, but it just wasn't convenient. So at the end of the day, I went with what was right in front of me and what was the most logical. And it didn't turn out very well. That assistant coach ended up leaving right before I came to the school and was replaced. And it was kind of a mess. And it makes me very sad because I still think that if I would have gone somewhere else, I think my trajectory would have been way different. Would I have gotten injured again? Would I have been redshirt? Would I have played the full 4 years? Would I have finished college? I don't know. I think about it often. I try not to, but I do. So it was a tough process for sure.
So I know, real quick, I know Nathan has a question here as well. Leading up to that, obviously, I don't know how many coaches you had, but leading up to college, how many arguably like bad coaches did you have?
Most.
Okay. Because I asked that question about bad coaches because I know that obviously a coach can make or break an experience. We know this, right? And not all coaches connect well with players. Everyone's got different personalities and whatnot. And obviously, I'm not saying that every coach that doesn't jive with a player is a bad coach, but that perception really is reality for a player, right? Because that player has a perception of that coach. And if that's the perception, that's the reality. So knowing that, how if your coaching experience, the coach at that university had been different, had been in fact that assistant coach, would that have changed the whole trajectory of that whole experience?
CSUN alone, yes. I would say maybe everything before and after, no. But oh yes, I think that what I dealt with at CSUN was 100% a coaching problem. That coach does not coach there anymore. Let's just say that. And I had a lot of club coaches who, made false promises or, just didn't care for my development and put other players on a pedestal who didn't necessarily deserve it. Just the usual. But this certain coach, nearly crushed a dream, and I could say did crush my dream. I'm not going to put him entirely at fault, but a coach can do that. And the way you speak to somebody, the way you treat somebody, um, is very important, especially as a coach to an 18-year-old. You know, I'm still 18. I'm a child. I'm a brat. Speak to me and treat me like so. So um, that can definitely affect somebody, and it did. It affected me. It affected me quite heavily. I mean, this guy was all the worst things combined. And it's sad because I didn't necessarily have that. I'm going to say it, security blanket of a coach as my assistant coach there. You know, it was a whole new coaching administration. He brought in a new assistant. I think it was like a new physical therapist. Just everyone was new, and then this one coach who had been there for years was still there, and the way he reprimanded us, or the way he, enforced fitness, a lot of things. It wasn't soccer for me anymore. It was a job that I hated.
Yeah,
Good
and
question.
the tricky part is I've seen that myself too. The people that I know that have gone into situations, and coaches really can kind of tear you down and do that. Especially if they don't direct you the right way. Sometimes it's a personality thing. There's a lot of other stuff that feeds into that. When you look back on it, obviously I think there were probably other people affected by the same exact thing that you were affected by. I guess my question is, is it hard to come to a place in your heart to forgive exactly what happened there? Because I'm sure there's a lot of looking back on it now. I'm sure there's a lot of thinking about how things could have gone differently one way or the other. Is it tough to come to that point?
I don't think I'm ever going to forgive this coach, but also, I mean, he was just a coach, and at the end of the day, he was doing a job.
Right.
I think what I regret is the way that I dealt with it. I think the way that I dealt with him, and I think the way that I took it personally and thought of myself. I mean, my self-esteem was buried underground. Like there was nothing, not any confidence for me after that. And I think that I could have done a better job of really truly believing in myself and knowing my worth. I mean, the process and everything I had to do to get to where I was, it's like I completely pushed that to the side and just forgot who I was as a player and as a person. And I let this person step on me. And I think I regret that. I think I regret letting this person diminish me, truly.
So thinking about that, and obviously the 16-year-old version of yourself who you could look back on now and say, hey, given these options that were in front of me, these choices that I had to make, you've already acknowledged that had that happened again, you would opt to go a different direction, knowing what you know today. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self, your 17-year-old self, the player out there who's right now in this exact same situation, who's experiencing everything that you experienced, and probably today experiencing on a different level because the world is different today, right? What advice would you give to that player, to yourself for that matter, to handle that situation differently?
I mean, it's a very unique situation. I think I would sit myself down and I would say, why are you doing this? Don't forget why you are playing and don't give up on that. Because the more people spoke about college, the further away my dream looked. I just wanted to go win a Champions League and play for Barcelona. Like, I know it sounds insane, but that's all I wanted to do was to play professionally and win a cup and I mean live in a different country, which I'm so thankful soccer led me to. But I wish I could have sat myself down and said, I know everybody's talking about college. I know everybody's talking about this 4-year plan. You don't have to do that. You don't have to play by those rules. You can achieve this dream sooner than what's being told to you, you know? But I was
I would have.
I
Yeah.
was alone on that. Sorry.
No, don't be. That's I. Listen, I wish someone would have had that conversation with me earlier, even in the broadcasting space. I remember at 22 years old, someone that I trust a lot, someone that I worked with a lot. I used to get report cards from a league that I was broadcasting in, which I still think is one of the more bizarre things I've ever seen in my life. Especially, it's like me critiquing you on soccer when I've never played. So that just doesn't. Anyways, but I got, I got the riot act read to me, and I remember, my partner kind of saying, "Hey, you have to know your place if you want to survive. You have to know your identity. You have to know why you're here. You have to know that you belong here, most importantly, if you ever want any chance of surviving." Is there a part of you that wishes someone would have had maybe that identity part of the conversation with you a little bit earlier and worked on solidifying who you thought you were and really, kind of getting that part down? Because everybody can talk about the game and developing physically and all these other things. But when we talk about kids, the emotional component is just as important, if not more important, than the physical side of it. Because someone can be a physical phenom, but yet mentally and emotionally not know who they are and kind of get lost in the sauce, if you will. Do you feel like maybe there wasn't as much of an emphasis on that side of the conversation as there was necessarily maybe the technical side of the game?
Yeah, I mean, from everybody, yes, I think the only person that stood by this dream was my dad. But because he's my dad, I did not listen to him. And I wish I did. It was
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, kids were emailing coaches, coaches were showing up to games, kids were talking about what they wanted to major in. My father never mentioned any of that. He said, "You want to play professional, you should play professional." But because he's my father, I said, "Dad, get away from me. You don't know anything like these people." you know? And
Right. Right.
and I wish I listened to him,
Hmm.
and that's why, I still have such a good relationship with him, because I know that he was the one who had my back. He had my back, and he knew what I wanted more than I did, because I was hearing from every person something else, that I should want something else. And I wish I listened. I did, but you know, here we are today.
Now but the nice part is now you're in a position to spread that message. Like
I
that's
am.
that's the nice part about it. It's the nice part about being in the media. It's the nice part about being in this position. It's the nice part about having you. And the truth is, and I know JT played. I played myself. Little tykes once upon a time running around the field. It wasn't anything organized. But your experience is uniquely yours, and I think that's kind of what helps us kind of sort through all of this. Now you're in a position to kind of spread that message. Now you're in a position to maybe have those conversations. Experience is the best teacher. I'm sorry. That's the only thing that teaches you the most, right? And your parents, but nobody wants to listen to them. And I've been in that position too, and it's come back to bite me every time. But now you are in a spot to where you can start spreading that message. Maybe not yourself. We talked about what you would have told yourself back then. But let's talk about the other kids now who have the pressure on their shoulders. Let's talk about the ones who are actively going through the process right now, because there's kind of a sense of urgency in the United States when it comes to developing kids and getting the most out of kids and really starting to compete, at least on the men's side on the international level. The women's side, they've done it already. But if you're looking at someone who is in your similar situation, who's going through that, who is maybe going through a tough coaching situation or just not really in the greatest position, establishing who you are and why you're there is so important. We've already talked about that. What is your message to those kids?
Take the risk. It may be risky to, take a gap year and play for a team. It may be, maybe things might not work out, but I would say take the risk. Remind yourself why you're doing it and take the risk. That's my advice.
You know, we as a as a former coach, you know, I can tell you that I was not liked by every player, right? I knew that. There were some I connected with and some I didn't. To be fair, my job wasn't to be liked. My job was to win soccer games. My job was to get the team, the program to elevate. And I knew that there were players that on some level probably felt exactly what you're feeling now or felt, right, as part of that process. And obviously never intentional. So on behalf of all coaches, I do apologize to you for that aspect, right? Because I can tell you this right now that I was not necessarily the most well-liked coach. You know, because unfortunately in a team environment, you're trying to manage a team and individuals, and sometimes they don't all connect at the exact moment, right? And that's the hardest challenge when it comes to a head coach. Now, an assistant coach is different. An assistant coach's role is to connect with players and to find out the pulse of that player and to work with those players so that they understand the big picture within the system, right? And hopefully they still align. So obviously having assistant coaches that understand that dynamic makes the program stronger, which is why ultimately CSUN was your home, because you realized even if you didn't have this great connection maybe with the head coach, this assistant coach was going to help kind of guide that path and hopefully connect those dots, right? And that's obviously what failed in that in that experience. You know, soccer in this country, we talk about how fragmented it is and how much there is out there. And everybody wants a piece of it. You know, right now, I feel like everyone wants a piece of soccer. When it comes to the college, the player right now who's in club, who wants to go to college, who wants to play at the next level, whether that be collegiately or professionally, and taking that risk, clubs right now have a huge responsibility. The club soccer space has a huge responsibility. As a former player, do you think that the club did a good enough job preparing you for what life was going to be like outside of the club once you excelled past it and into another realm? Would that be professionally and or collegiately?
I would say most clubs, yes. I think they did their best at preparing us for the level of intensity. Um, I don't think anything could have prepared me truly for how CSUN was, just because of the true extremity of the focus on like fitness, you know? But I think in regards to playing the game and being a good player and a good team player and focusing on winning, I think there was definitely a good amount of preparation in that. And the coaches focused on it, you know, they would bring it up, be like, hey, when you're going to go to college, this is how it's going to happen. And there was a good amount of preparation in that aspect.
I just wanted to fit one last one in, if I could, JT, if that's not a problem. We've talked a lot about, you know, clubs, and you mentioned most of them are pretty good at preparing you for the next level. There is that other side too. And again, you have to understand, I'm asking this as an outsider. I'm not asking this as someone who's in it, but I'm asking this also as someone who knows what it's like in other sports, where there are a lot of places that will convince parents to send them there, to train them, to do all these other things, to spend the money. That's the most important part, right? Follow the money. It'll probably give you the answers. And that means that not all these places are created equal. Not all these travel teams, not all these clubs are created equal. Some of them, they're businesses, right? They're businesses. And at the end of the day, they have to make money, which means that even if Johnny has no skill set whatsoever, if Johnny's parents are willing to spend the right amount of money, he will play for our team. It doesn't necessarily mean he's on another level. It just means they're willing to pay it. Not that I want to focus on the negative, because you've said a lot of great things on here, and I'm grateful, and I hope that we can get you on here more consistently. I know it's 6 a.m. where you are, so I hope you're drinking some sort of caffeine or something. No, you're just ready to go? All right. Do you
I got it.
Okay.
But she uses a straw, Nate. She has a straw. You see that?
I have a straw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see the other side of that, Victoria? Do you see clubs or organizations, maybe in certain situations, prioritizing the money a little bit more than the individual athlete? Because that's that fine line that we toe when it comes to the youth level, because we're talking about children. We're not talking about full-grown adults. We're talking about kids here. Do you see that side of it too?
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to talk too much about that just because it's a messy conversation still to this day.
Yep.
But my parents are truth tellers. My father is a truth teller to my face. I never heard they did not walk on eggshells with me. Not in a bad way. I'm just saying, I was sat down at 10 and I would be like, why does she start instead of me? And they would tell me the flat out truth, you know? They would be like, well, let's just say, uh, John and Jane Doe paid for their daughter to be there, or they're paying for their, and especially being from
Yep.
Los Angeles County, there's, there's a level of, you know, wealth, there's all kinds of, it's very diverse, all kinds of people, and you've got some crazy parents, helicopter parents who are willing to pay for their daughter to start in a game so that this coach can see them and they can get recruited. And then it doesn't even matter if they get the scholarship at the end of the day, as long as, this coach is willing to take some money and they'll play. And that's just,
Mhm.
it's been a topic since I was probably 10. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is definitely, and unfortunately it can crush dreams. I persevered, I would say, because at the club level, there's still that you can still find a way, if your parents are willing to still volunteer their time and their money to some level, there's a way to persevere. But
Do you think there's really
uh,
talented kids who have gotten buried because of that?
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. There's like names in my head of girls who I remember as a child, my parents were like, that girl is so good. That girl has so much talent. And I have no idea where they are today. I have no idea what happened to them. Um, but
Yeah.
money is a factor. It
Yeah.
is.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Well, money is a factor, and so is time.
Yeah. I'm done talking.
Okay.
I'm done talking.
It was a good segue. It was a really good segue. But no, I first off, Victoria, I am very grateful that you came on here, and we will have you on more often. I think that your perspective, while it may be unique, is something that across the soccer space is something that every player has or will experience on some level in their lifetime. And us sharing that story is really, really important. Right. And so we want to continue to have that conversation. So where maybe we can dive into some of the dynamics and things that specifics, and say, hey, how can we bring awareness to these types of things? And maybe even find like where, hey, maybe like the root causes might be, or to say, hey, if you bring the awareness, how do you keep an eye out for it? Right. How do you see? Because there's this part of this, right? It's like that new car smell, right? You get the brand new car, it smells great, and you drive it away, it doesn't have any problems. And then that first moment that that check engine light comes on, like this feeling overcomes you that you don't like the car anymore. Like, I'm worried now, right? This level of so it's almost like, does this check engine light come on, and can it come on sooner, to be fair, right? Before you even buy the car, like you want to have that come on before you even get involved. So we'll bring you on for sure for more conversations, and but we are excited to have you on our team and helping us grow on social media and do the things that you're doing, and helping finding a new way for you to share your love and passion for the game of soccer, but through the National Soccer Network.
Well, thank you so much for having me and letting me go on a tangent. I can talk about this all day. But this was so much fun. It was
That's
so
why
worth
we do
getting
it.
up. Yes.
That's why we do it. We do it like, right. And it's not that bad, right? Not bad. This is pretty easy. So, but with that being said, that is a wrap here on number 56. That's 56 episodes are in the books there, Mr. Wangler. If you want to ride solo tomorrow, my friend, you're more than welcome to. I have that all set up for you. But otherwise, I'll be back with you guys on Friday morning from at the same time as Victoria at 6 a.m. Holy moly. But in California time. But that'll be a wrap here. Again, subscribe, like us, share this with your friends and family. Make sure you head over to nationalsoccernetwork.com for more information. Nathan and I's picks will be on the website here today and on social media, so check those out for who we think is going to win the U.S. Open Cup matchups here this evening. But that'll be a wrap here on Inside the Game. That's Nathan Wangler. That was Victoria Quay. I'm Jonathan Turner. We'll see you here next time on the National Soccer Network. This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network.